time to litigate all of this.
Of course we don't, because then you're going to lose the argument. Everything is racialized, just like you're trying to do to me now.
Excuse me.
It's like, oh, I can't believe you're trying to suggest, that slavery is a good thing.
Just to be clear, you brought up race.
No,
this was a conversation about the arts, and you brought up race.
All right, Nick, let's get into our final segment here, because this may have flown under the radar for people that are maybe just not on social media or they don't watch CNN. Well, you should watch CNN, especially when your boy is on. But something happened last week where a fitness instructor, you may know who she is, Jillian Michaels. She used to be one of the fitness instructors on The Biggest Loser. She got invited to the CNN panel on Abby Phillips's debate show. And that show, as you know, I've been on it. It's an hour-long show. There's 5 segments. They tell you the topics that they're going to talk about ahead of time. They tell you who's going to be on the show with you. And on the panel with her happened to be a Democratic strategist. Representative Richie Torres was on the panel, Scott Jennings, and I forget who the other woman was, but they had 2 people rotating in and out as the 5th seat. So Jillian Michaels is there for the duration of the show. Don't even know what they talked about in the first couple segments. Couldn't tell you. But the one thing they did talk about coming up in one of the segments was about, if you recall, the White House, back on August 12th, the Trump administration sent a letter to the Smithsonian Institution requesting a comprehensive internal review of 8 of its museums, with the aim of bringing the organization in line with President Trump's cultural directives ahead of the country's 250th anniversary celebrations. So I want to read a little bit of the letter here. It said, this initiative aims to ensure alignment with the president's directive to celebrate American exceptionalism, remove divisive or partisan narratives, and restore confidence in our shared cultural institutions. And there's nothing that does that better, Nick, than a partisan written letter from the Republican president of the United States. But be that as it may, in the irony of that. So the conversation kind of talked about a little bit, because again, this was last week, talked a little bit about Trump sending this letter to the museums and what the White House is planning to do to conduct a process with respect to the 8 museums. The 8 museums, by the way, are the National Museum of American History, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the Museum of American Indian Culture, the National Air and Space Museum, the Art Museum, the Smithsonian American Art Museum, the National Portrait Gallery, the Hirshhorn Museum, and the Sculpture Garden. Okay, so those are the museums that it's going to be looking at. So anyway, the panel conversation got a little off the rails because Jillian wanted to interject when the Democratic strategist on the show, I believe her name is Julie Rodzinski, she started talking about what the aims were of Trump writing this letter and trying to rewrite parts of history. So here's what Jillian said, and here's where the conversation went. And we're going to react on the other side. So take a listen to this.
You cannot tie imperialism and racism and slavery to just one race, which is pretty much what every single exhibit does. But let's talk about the fact that when you look at slavery, let's talk about the fact that
slavery in America was.
Do you realize that only less than 2% of white Americans owned slaves?
But it was a system of white supremacy.
You realize that slavery is thousands of years old?
White people were.
Do you know who was the first race to try to end slavery?
Well,
what's controversial?
I'm very surprised.
This is an extraordinary exercise in historical revisionism.
I'm really surprised.
Do you realize that?
Jillian, I'm surprised that you're trying to litigate who was the beneficiary of slavery and who was not.
What I'm trying to tell you is that
in the context of American history,
okay.
In the context of American history, what are you saying is incorrect by saying that it was white people oppressing black people?
Every single thing is like, oh, no, this is all because white people bad. And that's just not the truth. Like, for example, every single exhibit, I have a list of every single one. Like, people migrated from Cuba because white people bad. Not because of Castro. Yes, no, it's in there. That's what I'm saying. You don't actually know what's in there. Do you know that when you walk in the front door, the first thing you see is the gay flag?
Jillian, you have a lot of stuff in front of you.
Yeah, I do,
what
because I don't, because here's the thing.
Are you talking about?
Okay, I'll give you an example.
Yeah, please.
There's one called Change Your Game, right? This has been an installation there. Is gender testing fair in sports? Does that, and then it goes on to talk about how it's complex to do gender testing in sports. It's not complex. It's basic science. That's untrue. It's XX chromosome, XY chromosome. That's sports. Is it fair to have biological men competing against biological women in sports? No. But why is this in the Smithsonian? So it's been completely captured.
First of all, I don't.
And it's totally partisan.
First of all, we don't have time to litigate all of this.
Of course we don't, because then you're going to lose the argument. If everything is racialized, just like you're trying to do to me now.
Excuse me.
It's like, I can't believe you're trying to suggest, that slavery is a good thing.
Just to be clear, you brought up race.
No,
this was a conversation about the arts, and you brought up race.
I don't highly encourage anybody to go back and look at the 2 minutes plus of this. I will say, just as a quick side note, for somebody who's been on those shows where two people are arguing with each other and the conversation goes off the rails, Scott Jennings is on that panel and didn't say one word on that panel. And let me tell you why he didn't say one word, because even he's not that stupid. And he knows that there's no argument here when it comes to talking about slavery. She's getting into the semantics of some of the things here, but according to socialequity.duke.edu, on this extensive fact check article that they did about what percentage of white Southerners own slaves, looking at slave states then, according to this finding, there was 393,975 slave owners in the slave states out of a population of 12.2 million. So that means about 3.22% of the population of the 15 slave states were slave owners. But the article is quoted to say, you have to remember that only free people own slaves, and the total population of the slave states included enslaved people themselves. So you got to adjust those numbers to reflect only free people. Therefore, the 393,000 plus slave owners were out of a free population of about 8 million. So that's close to 5% of the free population. The Confederacy, 11 states, had 316,000 slave owners out of a free population of 5.5 million. That's close to 5.7% of the free population. So again, I don't know where she's getting her numbers about less than 2%. Maybe she forgot what type of milk she put into her coffee that got her so hopped up during that segment. But maybe that's what she was referring to there, because any way you slice it, the numbers are wrong. And again, you can go to socialequity.duke.edu. Now, she goes to a second part and she wanders on a tangent to talk about female athletes and men playing female sports. And the Smithsonian exhibit, which sits in the Washington National Museum of American History, which addresses the complexities of gender testing. Its the currently World Athletics governing body is rolling out this gender screening. I'm reading from this article from the Daily Mail, Nick. They're rolling out this gender screening for female athletes that relies on a cheek swab or dry blood spot test to detect the presence of a Y chromosome. Okay. Remember, XY, right? That's male, female. Okay. So the process is an extension of the World Athletics new eligibility requirements that effectively bans transgender athletes from women's competition. Okay. This is what she's talking about here. And obviously some folks from Outkick, which is, the Clay Travis, Fox News adjacent, Fox Sports folks, are co-founders of, and they founded this company called XXXY with Jennifer Say. They're pointing out that this exhibit is incredibly, damning and alarming, and that we're talking about, biologics when it comes to sports and things like that. I'm not going to get into all of that. My feeling on all of this and things like that. Yeah, I do agree that, who cares? Let me take a deep breath here because I want to answer this properly. There are less than 14 NCAA Division I athletes right now that identify as transgender. 14. 14. Okay? There's 335 schools in Division I athletics that play. That's college sports. Forget about high school. That's college sports. That's thousands of student athletes. 14 are of this category. You making a big stink about 14? Give me a break. So I don't even want to talk about that. Again, whether or not the museum has this front facing, as she talked about, when you walk in or something like that, who cares? The overarching point that she talked about are two things. One, it should have been about your caloric intake and what fats are good for you. But no, why would a fitness instructor give her opinions on that? No, she had to come in and talk about American history and what these museums are teaching to the broader audience, which she has no subject matter expertise. If you know anything about this show, it's called Can We Please Talk? And the tagline is we talk to people who know what they're talking about. So when you want to learn more about American history, we go get Lindsay Chervinsky, who's an American historian that's been on the program, Eric Foner, who's a very noted American historian who has written about this period of slavery and Reconstruction. And his books are textbooks right now in schools. Those are the people we get on the show. You know who we don't get on the show? The lady at 10 p.m. that was yelling at fat people to lose weight. We don't get those people. And I'm not sure, I'm taking this side, Nick. I would love for you to take the education angle. I don't understand why CNN is booking somebody like that on a panel. Now, if the counter argument is, well, what are you doing on that panel? Well, I'm a journalism graduate. Nick and I started this show 5 years ago. We interview members of Congress, journalists, correspondents. I've worked for 2 news orgs. I'm in news, and I work for a foundation that puts on presidential debates between the third-party candidates. Some of you all have heard of Jill Stein, Chase Oliver, RFK, Cornel West. Nick and I have been to the debates. Like, I've helped in debate prep. I work for a foundation now. So I'm in the throes of politics. Jillian Michaels is teaching you whether or not you should eat 3 meals a day or 5 meals a day. Why would I listen to her about American history? What says Nick Savary here, a man who has actually taught some of these subjects and now deals with not only education at the higher ed level? I mean, when you heard this, and I don't know if you watched this panel, but I'm sure you saw this posted somewhere on social media. Initial thoughts, reactions, and what I just played in the clip there.
Yeah, I saw it. I think what always blows me away is that for some reason, when the conversation of slavery comes up, it's always an effort to, at least from conservatives, to try to downplay the experience of African American slavery. Jillian Michaels' mother is Jewish. Now, I don't know if Jillian celebrates Passover, and maybe her mother does. But the Jewish faith in the celebration of Passover is recognizing, and here it comes, the end of enslavement for Jewish people, for Hebrew people. This incredible opportunity, this incredible time where the Hebrews, led by Moses, leave Egypt through the workings of God. No one in their right mind would look at that holy event, or historically the migration of Hebrews from Egypt, and say, well, you know what? Big deal. They've had slaves all over the world. Who the hell would do that? But for some reason, when it comes to talking about the African slave trade, specifically in North America, everyone kind of starts to want to not dial that down. At least conservatives do. And there are some really good reasons why. Because if you start to peel back the layers, you can look at that economically. Slavery in the United States is a huge reason why the United States became an economic superpower through industrialization. So there was a huge economic impact to that. And the legacy of slavery also explains why you have a wealth disparity. It explains why home ownership predominantly is by white people. It explains why there's a rising number of suspensions and punitive discipline against primarily black children and children of color, as opposed to white children in schools. I mean, this study gets done over and over and over again because of a history and lingering history of racism. Now, post 1865, with the passage of the 13th Amendment, there was a time that African slaves were able to prosper, and that was quickly nullified by, sorry, Jillian, white people. You can look no further than what happened in Colfax or in Tulsa. There's many instances of immediately after slavery, the implementation of Jim Crow and all these measures. And you have to ask yourself why. If slavery was on the books, on the Constitution, considered illegal, why are all these measures of trying to continue to terrorize black people? It's because slavery is rooted, at least in America, based on the idea of race. These people are less than us. At least that's what white people thought. Remember, every time we light the fireworks off on July 4th, there's a certain portion of the population who rightfully shouldn't look at July 4th as a day of independence, and that's black people, because they still weren't free. And when Jillian says, well, only 2% of people, you know who makes up that 2%? Some of our presidents. So it is extremely important that we continue to have the conversation because the legacy of slavery is still very much real. I'm not going to necessarily downplay Jillian's background, but yes, I mean, this is a fitness instructor. This is a person who lives in the world of exercise and nutrition. And by the way, there's a pretty interesting documentary out about that show that she was on. You can go check on that. So clearly, even in that world, she may have been a bit problematic. In this vein, in this territory, this is where you shut up and you listen. I mean, can you imagine? Now, I don't know if Abby's family in the U.S. dates back to slavery. I don't know if Abby's from outside of the U.S. or her family is. But imagine in front of a black person saying, you know, everybody was enslaved at some point. Right. How dare you? The hell is wrong with you? So when I hear this argument about, well, everyone, universally owns slaves, no one's arguing that. That's the other thing about this history conversation. No one is ever arguing, as I just articulated about Egyptians owning, Hebrew slaves. No one has ever said that slavery began and ended in the United States of America. That's not true at all. But what we talk about when we talk about slavery in the United States is the African slave trade. We talk about the impact of that and how you can still feel that to this day. And that's an okay conversation to have. So even if the president is trying to culturally whitewash all this away, which, by the way, that sounds like something you would do in China. It's why the Dalai Lama still never steps foot in China. The Chinese government does these types of things where you just try to erase all information that's contrary to what you believe. It's shocking to me that we're having that same situation happening in the US, but thankfully, because of books and because of the internet and our collective memory, the president can do whatever he wants. You're never gonna silence those folks. Even if the Smithsonian plays ball for federal funding purposes and decides to start basically removing all information that the president doesn't want to see, any kid can hop on the internet or on social media and they're gonna learn something. So that battle is going to be lost one way or the other. But I heard Jillian make those comments, and my my reaction is like, why are we having this person on the show to talk about this? That's the first thing. But the second part is, this sounds like the kind of foolish shit you would say at Thanksgiving dinner. Like you've had a little bit too much to drink, so you just start letting off about whatever's bothering you. It does not matter the percentage of people. Percentages in this conversation about statistics is wrong. It doesn't matter how many percentage of white people own slaves. And this idea that we always look at, as she said there, she kind of gave up her argument right then and there we always point to white people. No, we don't. I mean, I don't. I just point out to the Egyptians, right? We've seen instances all over, historically, but in the United States, the conversation of slavery still matters. And to try to downplay that when we know that even sitting presidents have had slaves is a foolish gesture. But again, should I expect something more from someone who's absolutely not in this field of expertise at all and just sounds like someone who's just mouthing off because she's angry about the current state of affairs? I shouldn't be.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to piggyback on that because I absolutely do think we should be publicly shaming these type of people because I'm with you. And again, I say this now as somebody who's worked at some of these networks, who's helped put people on shows previously in a previous life, and now myself interacts with the people that book me to go on shows, right? Can you talk about this? Can you talk about that? If we're going to have a segment and we're going to talk about the one big beautiful bill and its impact to constituents, Nick, you and I have interviewed 2 members of Congress, 2 different districts, and we have asked them both about before the bill got signed into legislation and now post the bill getting signed to legislation. So we can regurgitate back because we have done the legwork on that, right? I'm not going to, I will never comment on certain things that I don't have within my purview. I can't imagine pitching myself to a network if my background was I knew how many dumbbells you should be using and what your rotational sets should look like, or how much your caloric intake should be daily given your age and your body fat. And then I'm going to sit here and talk about exit strategies in the Middle East, and I'm going to talk about geopolitics, and then I'm going to talk about American history and the Smithsonian Museum and executive orders and letters from the press. She doesn't know any of that. And the problem that I have now, it's 2025. We've got a former heroin addict leading HHS telling me about different tests in the medical profession when he has no medical degree, no degree in epidemiology, molecular biology, virology. He doesn't have any of that. Your wife should have that job. Your wife's a pediatric ICU doctor. Your wife could run circles around this person, yet that person's in charge. And that's what I get upset about, is that right now we have too many people that are in these positions where they shouldn't be in these positions. Like, it drives me nuts. Like, why? And that's why I am with the public shaming of somebody like a Jillian Michaels. And again, I will continue to point out until the death of me that this woman was on The Biggest Loser on NBC. Nick is right. There's a documentary that's out right now on Netflix that you can go watch about the show. She did not participate in it. And you know why, Nick? Because no one from that show maintained a relationship with her after the show. They talked about what a terror and a nightmare she was to work with. Nobody wanted to work with this woman, right? Now I got to sit here and listen to her opinion about American history and what we should be teaching and not teaching. I have a huge problem with that. So I agree with you that we should be shaming them. One more thing before we go to the break here.
Yeah, I think we're in this place now. And I think about Jillian Michaels, and inevitably I'm going to think about someone like Joe Rogan, right? I mean, Joe has talked to all these different kinds of people, but at the end of the day, Joe is an MMA commentator, a martial arts host, practitioner,
Fear Factor.
Yeah. Stand-up comedian, was on news radio. So, again, but has so many people listen to him and legitimately believe what he has to say. Theo Von. We have more and more people these days that have platforms or are platformed that have no business talking about what they're doing, or that have no business talking about this from any place of authority. Now, to Joe's credit, you're having all these different people on, and some people seem a little more credible than others. But at the end of the day, Joe is still spouting off what he believes, right? He reads something on the internet and then starts talking about it. When I look at Jillian, the reason I'm not as surprised by this or bothered by it is because that's where we are right now. I agree with you. Like, shame on CNN for this. But I would say to anyone who's bothered by this, just go back to reading your book. Like, it really doesn't affect me in any form whatsoever what the hell Jillian Michaels has to say about this, because it's beyond her proximity of understanding. So for me to exercise any brain power to try to get her sense of this is stupid.
Hey everybody, Mike Leon from the Can We Please Talk podcast. Thank you so much for watching this clip. Do me a favor, hit subscribe. You're gonna get more content from us over at Can We Please Talk.